Is my camera even worse than normal? Okay, so today I want to talk about a topic near and dear to my heart, which is the concept of what I call rationalism. Now, a lot of people use the word rationalism in a lot of different ways. So it's important for me to talk about exactly when I say rationalism, when I say that a person is rational, what exactly do I mean by that? And it obviously is a concept that means a lot to me because when my school, or my last school, asked me to name one quality that I wanted to instill in students, rationalism was like the one big one that I would point to. So what does it mean to be rational? So first of all, probably the most important thing about rationalism for me is that rationalism has nothing to do with beliefs. So to put that another way, for pretty much any claim about the real world, just because you believe that thing doesn't necessarily mean that you are or are not rational. So let me give some examples. In my opinion, you can believe the world is flat and be rational. In my opinion, you can believe that, I'm trying to think of another good example. You can play 1G4 and be rational. You can believe that the sky is purple and be rational. None of these individual claims are enough to say that a person is not rational. Okay, so then if rationality isn't about beliefs, or rather, it's not about knowledge, what is it about? So for me, rationalism is about thought process. It's about what is the method that you use to figure something out. Now, for most people, some of those beliefs that I named earlier would make you irrational. Or rather, we could inductively reason. If somebody says they believe the earth is flat, they're probably not a rational person. But that doesn't mean they are irrational. It's about what thought process did they use to get there. A big part of the reason I say that you can be rational and believe things that are wrong is because it could be the case that you're missing some vital piece of information that, given that information, you would come to the correct conclusion, but you lack that information, so you come to an incorrect conclusion. So how do you tell if you're rational? How do you tell if somebody else is rational? So for me, the number one thing to tell if a person is rational is they should be able to change their mind on any position. Anything. There shouldn't be any topic where they say, okay, I believe this thing and there's nothing ever that could possibly get me to change my mind. To me, that's irrational. And I mean on anything. Like if you, let's say that I said that there's nothing that could change my belief that there's coffee in this cup right now. Well, I'm literally looking at the coffee. So it seems pretty likely that there's coffee in the cup if I can literally see the coffee. But it's possible that the coffee is illusory, like it's an illusion. And there's not actually coffee in this cup. My eyes are being deceived for some reason. And given that information, I should change my mind about the coffee being in the cup. Now, the coffee being in the cup is a pretty basic claim. It's pretty hard to come up with ways to disprove it, and I did. So when we talk about more substantive more complex beliefs, beliefs like, does God exist? Beliefs like, is global warming real? Is the world flat? These are much more complicated beliefs. These aren't beliefs where you can just go like, okay, I'm going to go one thing, and now I know the answer. So if you can't change your mind on those things, given some set of beliefs, then you're definitely irrational. Now, there is a slight caveat that I would make here, which is that some beliefs are what we would call, some beliefs are what we would call like axiomatic or properly basic. Technically, these things have a distinction in philosophy. I don't know it, though, because I only took Philosophy 101. But basically, there are certain beliefs that you have and that pretty much everybody has, where to go about questioning them, you would have to basically assume them. But these are basically the only exceptions. So let me give a couple of examples of these beliefs. So it would be okay if you're never, ever, ever going to change your mind about the statement, deductive logic is true. Because how would you disprove that? You would have to assume it. And then at the end, I could get, like, even if you had the most perfect proof for why deductive logic wasn't true, I could at the end say, okay, but it is true. And then you would go, but I just proved it's not true. And I could say, well, it's both. And then you would go, how could you say it's both true and not true? And then I would say, you just use deductive logic. Or inductive logic, or that the real world exists. So these are like fundamental axiomatic claims. These ones can't really be questioned because, again, how would you possibly disprove them? You would have to assume them to disprove them. But again, when we're talking about literally anything more complicated than that, like how many people there are in the United States, or, you know, why is murder wrong? Like anything more complicated than that, you should be able to change your mind on. So secondly, when you are discussing a political or philosophical belief, and you're being challenged on that belief, or you're just challenging yourself on that belief, you need to engage with whatever the argument is that's actually being made. So something I see a lot of people do is that instead of attacking the belief that's actually there, they attack like non-substantive things. They attack what the person is wearing, or who the person is who's giving the argument. Or even just they'll attack like a straw man version of the argument. Not only should you attack the argument being made, but you should work your best to steelman that argument as much as possible. So if they give an argument and there's some small semantic flaw with their argument, you should do your best to help them correct that flaw before you attack. And this is something I see over and over again, where somebody will say something very slightly semantically wrong, and then they'll latch on that as opposed to the actual argument being made. I literally saw an example of this the other day where I have this guy who I know where he said, so it seems like you're implying this. And then the other guy goes, huh, you idiots. I'm not implying it. I'm outright stating it. Okay, well, there is a difference between implying and stating something, but the difference is so small and so semantic that that's not really what you guys are talking about. So you shouldn't really be bringing it up. So again, steelman the argument, actually argue about what's being said. If you offer to steelman their argument and then they don't accept the steelman, then I guess you can go ahead and attack them. but just know that that's what's happening. And then finally, the argument is always more important than the final stance. So if you end up being right later using information that was not known at the time, that doesn't mean that your argument earlier was rational. It's possible to make an irrational argument and be right. It's possible to make a rational argument and be wrong. So make sure that you're holding yourself accountable for your arguments and that you're looking at your thought process and not your conclusion. But those are the big things.